Good morning, team. It is Tuesday, February 2nd. It is snowy outside and it is busy out there. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm Amy Core and I'm joined live by Kevin Van Eck, and we are out of the Goose Island office. So grab your coffee, your tea, your power smoothie, and let's jump into another episode of Coffee with Amy and Kevin.
Good morning, Amy. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Yes, make sure your coffee's full. Well, we know what's happening around us. In many markets across the US, we're in a seller's market. And in your market, that's likely what it is too. So one of the challenges we have is working with buyers when we're in a seller's market to make sure that they get to where they want to go. So getting a contract on a listing as the listing agent is relatively easy at this point, but working with a buyer to make sure that they get the property they want is a little more difficult. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today.
That's right, Kevin. We are going to outline 5 things we can do to create buyer success in this busy market right now. And the first thing that I want to recommend to all of you is sticking with your process. This is really important. I know the market is moving very fast right now, and we might have buyers that we are suddenly engaging with who want to get out, jump in our car, and start looking at properties as soon as possible. That's great. It's really exciting, but we want you to remember to take a step back, take a deep breath, and make sure that you follow your process so that you can create success for your buyers, but you also don't waste your time. And what do we mean by following your process? We all know some of the things we need to do before we get a buyer into our car and actually looking at properties. First thing that we need to do is probably have that buyer consultation where we sit down and make sure they have all their ducks in a row as they pertain to financing, what they want, what their time frame is, etc. Really important to have that initial meeting. But even more important during this meeting, you need to make sure that this buyer that you're going to be working with understands what's happening in the market that they are looking in. And we have many markets, right? Depending on price point and area. We also know there's a lot of lack of inventory, but the more we can prepare the buyer up front for what to expect when they actually see a house that they like, it's going to allow them to move more effectively towards getting that house. And what I mean by that is if you let them know that we are in a market right now where it's going to be competitive, that they may need to be prepared to come close to or even over asking price, and that they may have to give on certain terms because the seller has many buyers that are interested in the property, that's going to be helpful to them. If you don't explain this before they find the house that they love and they try making an offer, they may feel like you're actually pushing them into doing something that they're not comfortable with because they don't understand the market that they're in. And you want to make sure that you are setting expectations as well. You may need to let them know, listen, this market is moving pretty fast and we may lose out on a property or two before we can secure one for you. Again, if you have these conversations before they happen, you can vet through any of the emotional things that worry them or might be roadblocks for them before they can move forward. So make sure to be the advisor that gets them ready. It's kind of like the coach that helps their team members get ready for game day. You want to make sure that you practice through with them up front by coaching them before you actually get them in front of a property that they absolutely love.
That's right, Amy. And I think that's such good advice because a lot of times in a fast market, we might get away from the process that we have because we feel like we have to move more quickly. And one of those things in the process is making sure we have a pre-approval. And so when you're meeting with a buyer, when a buyer reaches out, we know this is the first step. This is really basic. But there are stories out there right now of offers being submitted without pre-approvals and expecting that the listing agent and the seller will entertain those or hold off other offers for multiple days while the buyer gets their pre-approval. And we know that's not going to happen. So as part of your process, make sure that you've got a pre-approval ready for that buyer. And it's super easy to do because now you can get pre-approvals online. And part of this process is making sure that your buyer is using a reputable lender, like Proper Rate. Proper Rate, they can get their pre-approval online at any time. They can apply and put all their information in. It'll run their credit. It'll review so that you get a reputable pre-approval to submit with your offer. And sometimes what we hear is, well, even if we're using a smaller or a lesser known lender, we can tell the listing agent to call them and verify and make sure that they're solid. But here's the problem with that, is that then you're relying on someone else to do work to make sure that your buyer gets the property. And let's say that listing agent has 5 offers. Do we really believe that that listing agent is going to call all 5 lenders to vet? Or are they going to suggest to the seller that they accept or at least entertain the offer from the reputable lender? So something to think about. We know it's very basic to have your pre-approval ready, but it is absolutely necessary in this market. And on top of that, to have a pre-approval from somebody, from a lender that everybody knows.
Really smart point, Kevin. So number 3, we want you to be aware of the 5 negotiating points in a contract. And we all know what these are, but let's remember the points are price, timelines, those are the timelines in the contract, the contingencies that are part of the contract, inclusions, what's going to be included with the offering, and what is excluded or the exclusion. And then we also need to make sure that we're aware of some of the other important terms like earnest money, but make sure you're really aware of what you're negotiating, because oftentimes people just think it's price alone. Let's face it, price is important to a seller, but it's really looking at the whole package of an offer and what makes sense for them. And here's another bit of advice. Make sure to ask the listing agent what's important to the seller. You know, Kevin and I were just talking prior to filming this about how we are seeing more and more sellers going on the market right now, but they, you know, because the market is so good, they want to take advantage of it, but they really don't want to close until May or June. They want to make sure that they can find something else for themselves to move into, or they maybe want their kids to be able to finish out their school year where they're at. So price is important, but make sure you understand all of the terms and make sure to engage the listing agent. That's also important because that'll allow you to start a relationship with this listing agent and make sure that you're really trying to figure out how to create an offer that's great for their seller. So it's more than just a price. It's going to be those terms. The last thing that you want to also talk about and make sure that you engage the listing agent with is the escalation clause. I know many of you out there have used it or have had to negotiate with it if you're representing a seller. Here's the thing. There are listing agents out there right now that don't really love using it, or they feel that it's unethical and they don't really like to present it to their seller. Better that you know that ahead of time, or that you know that the listing agent isn't that comfortable with an escalation clause before you try to put one into your offer. So just be upfront, ask them about it. The best thing that you can do is engage this listing agent, make sure you understand what's most important to them and their seller, so that when you put your offer together, you put your best foot forward and you've got your buyer's greatest shot at getting the property.
So let's go to number 4. Number 4 is preparation. Now there's a lot in here. We want to make sure that we're prepared. And the first I would say is make sure that when you are out with a buyer that you have an offer drafted. Now you may not know exactly what property they're going to be writing an offer on. You don't know exactly all of the details, like who the listing agent is or all of that, or the terms or the price, but let's have something together. And to that point, let's make sure that our buyer has already talked with and chosen, of course, their lender, they have a pre-approval, but also their attorney. That way you can fill out the offer with all of the information together. Now, the second thing with preparation is you may decide that using a letter from the buyer to the seller is effective. You don't want to be the one offer that doesn't include this if there is a connection to be had. So use your judgment. A lot of agents have, strong opinions on whether a personal letter from the buyer to the seller is necessary or whether it has an impact, but we know the stories where it has had an impact on the seller, where they felt like there was a connection. So this is something to consider as a buyer's agent, and you can have it prepped and ready to go before you write the offer on the property. Now, the third thing you want to be prepared for, you want to prepare your your buyers. And to what Amy said at the beginning, with the buyer meeting and setting expectations, here's another conversation to have. And this is the way to have it. It's about regrets. When you're setting the offer price, you want to make sure that that buyer isn't going to regret paying too much, but also you don't want them to regret not paying enough. Basically, if they lose out in a multiple offer situation, you don't want them to sit there and think, well, we would have offered more, but we didn't get the chance. It really is potentially a one-shot opportunity. And to that point, let's remember who makes the decisions. It's the seller that makes the decisions when offers come in and when there's a multiple offer situation. The seller decides, and this is really important. Listen to this. I know we all know this, but let's really hear this out, is that the seller has options. Remember, in a multiple offer situation, nobody is required to go into a best and final. The seller can address each offer individually. The seller can negotiate just one offer. The seller can accept and execute an offer straight away without negotiating or entertaining any of the other offers. And then another option is they can go into best and final. But the point is to make sure that your buyer is putting their best foot forward, that there will be no regrets, that it could be a one-shot opportunity to purchase that property. And let's make sure that they don't regret missing out. And if they do miss out, we know what happens. There's disappointment. But let's be prepared for that scenario as well with a potential backup offer. In the multi-board contract, it's built in. And with the car contract, there's an addendum. It's called the cancellation of prior contract addendum or clause. And what that says is that both parties, the buyer and the seller, can actually execute the offer with this addendum or a clause where if the first contract falls apart, this contract slides right into place. Ask your managing broker about this if you're in this scenario. It's a really powerful tool, even on the list side, to use to make sure that you have a backup offer ready to go and in place, and you don't lose a beat if that first offer falls through.
All really good points, Kevin. So the fifth thing that we wanted to cover is negotiations. These are also a key when it comes to creating success for your buyers. And we cannot encourage this enough. Make sure whenever there is an opportunity that you have to go voice to voice or face to face. So the more that you can connect over the phone with the listing agent, or even if you have the opportunity to see them or engage with them face to face in some fashion, the better off you're going to be. You know, odds of success are much lower if there is just texting or emailing going on. Let's face it, when we talk about you making a connection with your clients, we always tell you face-to-face or phone is really important and critical. You can hear emotion in people's voices. You can get real-time emotion and idea of where somebody stands. The same is true when you're negotiating with another broker. So make sure whenever you can and whenever it's really appropriate, you pick up the phone and you're able to have a voice dialogue. Now, sometimes agents say to us, what if the listing agent seems to like to text or email only? You know, that can sometimes be a hard obstacle because you want to, mirror some of their actions so they feel like it is convenient and a great way to communicate. But what I would tell you to do is maybe address it up front, especially if it's a situation where it's a competitive property and there are a lot of people involved. You may want to say at the outfront, listen, I'd like to make sure that after I send you an offer or we have a text exchange, that we can just pick up the phone and have a quick conversation. So get their buy-in that your style of communication might want to be more on the emphasis of talking over the phone versus just a text or an email. And then, what you want to do though is we've all done this. We've had long conversations, negotiating with a listing agent on behalf of our buyer. We sometimes brainstorm ideas and we kind of figure out, what we're talking about and how we're going to make a deal work. Once you've come to some sort of term verbally, it is really important to follow that up with a confirmation of what you discussed by text or email. I was, again, talking to Kevin earlier about when I used to sell and when it was a busy market, sometimes I would have a couple of buyers and they would be in similar price points and they would have similar terms. And I would have to be really diligent about making sure I didn't cross over what I was communicating in regards to terms so that I would cross some buyer's term for another buyer's. So make sure, again, after you have that conversation with a listing agent, follow it up with an email of what you discussed and what was agreed upon. It's going to be a great paper trail, and it just makes sure you both stay on the same page and there isn't any miscommunication down the road.
All of these have been so important. I think that communication one, Amy, is one of the most important because so many issues arise out of the misunderstandings that come from written, whether it's text or email. So really good things today. go back. If you haven't watched, if you watch this again, I think you're going to be able to pull more out of it. We have a lot. There were 5 things we talked about with specific tips within each. And so these are all really important when working with a buyer in this market if you want to create success for your buyers. So thank you for watching. Please let us know at coffee@properties.com if you have any questions, or if you have any great success stories in using these tactics, please share them with us. We hope you make it a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, team. Make it a great day.